Thanks for tuning in. You're watching Big Story with me, Avni Raja. Let's get straight to our big story that we're tracking today. Now, Ryan International School in Gurugram reopened 10 days after the brutal murder of 7-year-old Pradyuman. But what is striking is the fact that there were only 4 students present in Pradyum's class, giving a clear indication of the fear that has gripped the young minds and parents. Now, parents and guardians were seen in large numbers outside the school to drop their children. Another way to ensure that their kids are safe. The school functioned amidst heavy security. Just to recount, it was on 8th of September that Pradyum, a student of class 2, was found with his throat slit in the washroom near his class.
थोड़ा बहुत तो डर लगा ही हुआ होगा सबको। बोल रहे थे कि स्कूल मत जाओ अभी, तो तब तक ये केस चल रहा है। मैंने कहा स्कूल तो जाना पड़ेगा, फिर कह रहे मैं छोड़ के आता हूँ।
तो आज पढ़ाई के लिए बुलाया गया या एग्जाम के लिए बुलाया गया?
आज पढ़ाई के लिए बुलाया गया।
सर मेरे को खुद डर लग रहा था, मैं तो खुद स्कूल नहीं आना चाह रहा था, बट अब सर गवर्नमेंट बोल रही है कि प्रोटेक्शन देगी तो हमें सर कंट्रोल करना ही पड़ेगा। एंड वैसे भी स्कूल जाना ही पड़ेगा क्योंकि पढ़ना तो है ही।
हम तो ये सोच के आते थे कि बहुत अच्छा स्कूल है और इलाके का नंबर 1 स्कूल है, और जब हमें मीडिया के द्वारा या जैसे भी पता लगा कि स्कूल में इतनी सारी खमियां हैं सिक्योरिटी को लेके, या हमें तो ये भी नहीं पता था कि यहाँ पे कोई ठेका है बराबर में, तो हमें तो बड़ा सरप्राइज हुआ इसको देखते।
I hope that the school will take some kind of learning from these incidences.
बहुत डर लगा हुआ है एक्चुअली। अभी भी बहुत सारे क्वेश्चंस हैं कि पता नहीं बच्चे सेफ है कि नहीं है, तो वही सारी चीजें लग रही, इसीलिए मैं खुद लेकर आई हूँ। सब अभी वही गाड़ियाँ वैसी ही हालत में जैसी थी, कोई चेंज नहीं हुआ है।
Let's go across to Apurva now. Apurva, we just heard some of the parents and the students really talking about how it feels to come back to school 10 days after this murder actually happened. You've also been speaking to a lot of parents. What is really on their minds? Of course, the school has reopened post some opposition from Pradyum's parents as well.
That's right, 10 days after the Ryan International School, Bonsi area in Gurugram reopened. And this, remember, after the brutal murder of the 7-year-old Pradyuman was brought to light. Certainly, Avni, fear has gripped each and every parent inside this school. They were, in fact, all the parents who, in fact, came in the morning as well to drop off their wards, stayed even after dropping their children. They stayed for at least 30 to 40 minutes. And that is indicative of how worried they are, the concerns that's brewing within every parent. Asking just one question, is this school really safe for their children? Why hasn't the management really given any kind of assurance to these parents? And that is something that has been coming out ever since this incident was brought to light. Now, 10 days after, we have seen a lot of parents coming to the school. They did drop off their children. But more importantly, if we just speak about Pradyuman's class, which is 2nd A, there was only 80% children who were still absent, which means only 4 to 5 kids really attended the class. And that is also indicative of how the parents are really not in a condition right now to send their kids to school for 2 reasons. Number one, the kid themselves are not in a position right now to go to school. They have been consistently raising objection and denying going to school. Secondly, the fear within the parents is something that is not allowing them to take their kids to school. So these are 2 primary reasons why 80% children remained absent in the class. And that is understandably enough to show the kind of concerns that the parents have been raising consistently regarding the safety and security of their children. And they have maintained that they will not allow their kids to go to school. They have to take some very important decisions later on. We in fact spoke to some 20 parents in that class, and we found out how 2 parents have already removed their kids from the school. 6 of them are still undecided at this point in time whether or not they should remove their kid from school, because it is going to be an additional financial burden of them. Should they be waiting since it is mid-session? Is it going to be a good decision to remove the kid at this point in time? But there were 8 to 9 parents who very categorically said that they want to remove their kid from the school, but right now are very keenly looking at some other school. They have put their applications in various schools. So these are the sentiments that are really coming in as far as this entire case is concerned, especially after 10 days the school reopened. Certainly, the parents are very uneasy with whatever has happened. They are very worried, concerns looming large about the safety and security, and more importantly, they are maintaining that the school hasn't really been able to give them some kind of trust or even build that confidence which has absolutely been lost with each and every parent whose kid goes to Ryan International. Back to you.
Right, Apurva, thanks for getting us all of those details. In fact, we've got Dr. Shraddha Sidhwani, psychiatrist, on the phone line joining us. Thank you very much, Dr. Sidhwani, for joining us. We heard some of the parents, some of the students talking just a short while back, saying that they're extremely fearful of going back to the school and letting their kids go. It's been about 10 days that the school has opened since this entire thing happened. Attendance was understandably low. Do you believe that something like this obviously would have a lasting impact on both parents and children?
Yes, I do believe the incident has taken the whole country aback. So, of course, the parents and children who have been going to the school are definitely fearful. I think the fear is sort of justified in its effect.
Right. Many of the younger children who perhaps don't really understand the gravity of what happened and how this would perhaps impact going forward would perhaps have a lot of questions they would be asking their parents, and maybe resistance as well to going to school, like we also heard. How should parents really deal with all of that?
I think since it's all over the media, since it's all in the papers, on social media as well, I think it's very important for parents to sort of give an awareness to the to children in general. So even younger children can be told, not to the degree of the murder, but at least be aware about the security that the school has to offer. And what steps have been taken by the school faculty and by the government. So I think parents can sort of keep the children aware of, once you head back to school, there are certain measures that the school authorities have taken so that they can address the fear that the children are going through.
And how would something like this really psychologically affect young children specifically?
Psychologically, it does affect young children. There are some children who, have a tendency to overthink. Those children can have nightmares, can have dreams, can have panic attacks and anxiety episodes. So I think one needs to sort of talk to the child and make the child feel very secure. Also, I think the reaction of parents has made the child, doubly anxious. So it's also how the parent is responding to the child at home and asking questions about the school repeatedly, which were earlier not asked.
Right.
So I think there the child is going to feel that, why the mother or why the father is constantly asking about the school. So talking to your child and engaging in a lot of communication will sort of help the child.
Doctor, the other question really was how this would affect young children once they grow up, if perhaps maybe their fears or, even subconsciously how it impacts them at this young age, how it could perhaps trickle down and impact them when they grow up.
I definitely think the child who was, the particular standard or the particular class, whoever's classmate he was, those children specifically would require some kind of counseling from the school counselors or from privately, where they can sort of, just talk about what has happened, what they've heard about their friend. So I think some kind of counseling needs to be required for the particular children who knew the child. Right. Other than that, yes, it can affect children in general. Like I said, they can, start bedwetting. They can have nightmares. So they can have tremors in the night. So a child needs to be spoken about. Some kind of counseling can come in. What parents can do is, if they see any unusual behavior in the children, for example, bedwetting, or, their academics are dropping, or their appetite is dropping, their sleep is not regular, the parents can pick it up and take them to a counselor.
Right. Extremely important point.
Some kind of intervention at this stage will also help. But parents need to be, careful. Parents need to be aware of the signs and symptoms.
Right. Also, the other fact, wouldn't this also be an important factor as to how the parents' fear gets rubbed off onto the child? Because at this point, there are still those parents and who feel that maybe the person who has been arrested is not the person who has actually committed the crime, and the real criminal could actually still be there. So that fear actually getting rubbed off on the children.
Yes. Sure, of course, that is definitely going to have an impact on the child. As I said, this has now become a common topic at home. Parents asking and being inquisitive about the school, what's happening, what authorities, who did you speak to. So these kind of questions are going to make the child very conscious. So I think the parents need to be addressed in a, maybe go through some form of counseling or have a general meeting with the school authorities about the security and the concerns required.
Right. And one final question, Dr. Sidhwani, is that there's some children, of course, who have returned to school. But what are the important things that teachers and perhaps the management really need to do to ensure that and give the parents and children that sense of security?
I think the teachers can sort of have, sort of group meetings and engaging them in group activities where, they can sort of normalize the environment because there's a lot of anxiety in school. There's a lot of fear among parents and parents and children. But I think more so for the children, they need to sort of normalize the school environment, the classroom environment, when they have breaks, they can play, they can enjoy, they can laugh again because that is what we go to school for.
Right.
I don't, children should not be, they should not have a prohibited response. They should not become passive in that sense. They should go out and enjoy in the same school because we need to start living a normal environment again.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Dr. Shraddha Sidhwani, for joining us and giving us all that valuable advice. In fact, Pradyuman's father, Varun Thakur, has raised his concerns over the reopening of the school, especially since the school will erase all evidences related to the case before CBI starts its investigation.
अगर इस मामले में पूरे मामले में अशोक के अलावा जो मुझे पूरी संभावना लगती है, अगर दो तीन लोग इन्वॉल्व हैं तो वो आज बाहर हैं, वो आज उसी स्कूल प्रेमिसेस में मौजूद है, तो उनको आप स्कूल खोल के मौका दे रहे हैं कि वो जो बचे खुचे एविडेंसेस हैं उनको भी वो डिस्ट्रॉय कर सकें, टेम्पर कर सकें.
Meanwhile, Women and Child Development Minister Menka Gandhi said that the government is working on setting a deadline for implementation of safety guidelines in schools. Suggestions include hiring of more women staff, including drivers and conductors.
We have suggested certain things. The Ministry of HRD has also suggested certain things. And so there will be a meeting of 6 secretaries, all of whom run various schools, and they will then decide on the timelines of these implementations. Some of them you already know some of the suggestions made, like making it mandatory for female staff in the vehicles, or Boxo e-box, which is already in use, or for Komal to be shown, or for other things. Now all these are now in the process of being timelined. So when that happens, then we'll let you know.
Now, in light of the security issues in schools that Pradyuman's murder has raised, the Mumbai police has come out with a list of guidelines for 7,000 schools in the city. Mirror now accessed these guidelines that hope to make schools safer for children.
That's right, Mirror now has exclusively accessed the guidelines that will be issued by the Mumbai police to various schools across the city here in Mumbai. Over 7,000 schools will receive these guidelines latest by this week. In fact, police officials from the special branch told exclusively to Mirror now that these guidelines, some of them do exist in present, but they are not implemented. So priority for the Mumbai police will be to see whether these guidelines, which will be revised now and review, whether these guidelines will be executed and implemented. So for that, a nodal officer will be appointed who will execute all the guidelines that will be issued by the Mumbai police and will keep a check on a regular basis. Secondly, mandatory installation of CCTV cameras inside the school premises. Third and most important, background verification and check of the staff, which include the peons, the drivers, the bus conductors and even male teachers. And that information will be sent to the police, which will verify on a daily basis. fourth important thing, will hire special guards who will sit outside the washrooms to keep a check as to no untoward incident happens. And importantly, for the first time, they are also initiating and implementing a buddy scheme where two school children can visit the washroom together. So these are various initiatives that the Mumbai police will be issuing to the schools. And also, lastly, an important thing, they will also hire special guards to keep a check on no unauthorized person can enter the school premises. So
all right, that was as far as the guidelines being suggested by the Mumbai police. Joining me now on the phone line is Anubha Sahai, President, Parent Teacher Association. Thank you very much, ma'am, for joining in. You know, my first question to you is regarding the fact that we've seen Ryan International School being reopened today after 10 days. Of course, attendance in Pradyuman's class was extremely low, but overall parents and children are really, the fear is really set in. Just your reaction on the fact that school has now reopened.
School will have to run, no doubt, because the children will be affected. So it's a good step, I would say, by the government of Haryana, that they have taken over the school and they are running the school. But I would say not for 3 months. They should take it over for like maybe 3 years or 5 years. And then later on they can transfer it to some other management. But Ryan management should not be allowed to run that school.
Right.
That is a demand which every parent association is demanding today.
Right.
Such management should not be allowed to run any school, I suppose, at least in Haryana and maybe later on in India also.
Okay. Now, we've seen, you know, ever since this happened, several people coming out with various guidelines. We saw Menka Gandhi come out with, you know, spoke about several guidelines being implemented. We saw Mumbai police as well come out with a set of guidelines to be implemented. You know, the question really is that there are certain guidelines already in place that haven't been implemented. Obviously, that has led to such incidents that have been increasing. And now these new guidelines sort of coming into place. How much do you think this is actually going to affect the and enhance the security of children in schools?
See, until unless these guidelines are implemented properly across these schools, I don't think it will help us. Because guidelines are in place since many years. Now again, they are coming up with same guidelines, maybe with few modifications. I don't think that it will help. It will help only when the government will implement these guidelines. They will go and visit, they will actually go and visit the school and conduct inspection, and they should be submitting the report on public domain so that parents can also view that which schools are following guidelines. So there has to be a regular check by the officers, education department, police department every quarter. And because what is happening currently is, in spite of several guidelines, all the education officers, they just visit school and they just come. They don't do anything. They don't submit any report. The report also, if they submit, that is also, I don't think, is correct. And so my and other parent association demand is that आप जितनी भी guidance लेके आइए, we are happy with that. But until unless you implement those guidelines, I don't think any change will be going to happen.
Absolutely. Like you said, the key here is implementing and not really coming up with new guidelines. But thank you very much, Anubha Sahai, for joining us. On that note, time to take a quick break. We'll be back. Stay tuned.